The grocery store's automatic doors had barely closed behind Maria Santos when she heard the cashier's voice rise behind her, sharp and carrying. "Ma'am, your card was declined again. I need you to either find another payment method or step aside so I can help the next customer." Maria felt her face burn, painfully aware of the small line forming behind her, of her 6-year-old daughter Isabella standing beside the half-loaded grocery cart, confused by the sudden tension in her mother's posture. Maria had known the card might not go through. She'd been counting cents all week since her hours at the diner had been cut unexpectedly. But she'd hoped, foolishly, that this trip might somehow be different. "I'm sorry," Maria said quietly, already reaching to remove items from the cart, prioritizing what Isabella actually needed over what she'd hoped to buy. "I'll just take the essentials. Please, just the bread and the milk." She was moving quickly now, embarrassment driving her to finish the transaction and leave before the small scene drew any more attention than it already had. It was in the middle of this quiet unraveling that she noticed a man nearby, tall and unassuming in a simple jacket, watching with an expression that wasn't judgment, but something gentler. What Maria didn't know was that the man was Adam Whitmore, founder of Whitmore Technologies and one of the wealthiest men in the state, currently doing his own grocery shopping, a habit he maintained even after his company's success, mostly because it gave him quiet, ordinary time with his 8-year-old son Caleb, who was currently examining cereal boxes a few aisles over. Adam hadn't approached out of pity. It was Isabella who caught his attention first, her small hand reaching for her mother's sleeve, whispering something Adam couldn't quite hear, though the gesture itself, protective and worried beyond what a 6-year-old should have to carry, struck something deep in him. "Excuse me," Adam said, approaching Maria carefully, keeping his voice low enough not to draw further attention. "I couldn't help but notice. Would you let me cover the rest of your groceries?" Maria's instinct was immediate refusal, old pride rising sharply despite her circumstances. "That's very kind, but I can't accept that from a stranger." "I understand," Adam said gently. "But I'd like to ask you to reconsider, not for yourself, if that makes it easier, but for her." He nodded subtly toward Isabella, who was watching the exchange with wide, uncertain eyes. Maria looked down at her daughter, weighing pride against the practical reality of an empty pantry waiting at home, and finally, reluctantly, nodded. Adam paid for the full cart without fanfare, refusing Maria's repeated attempts to note his information for repayment, insisting instead that it was simply a kindness offered without conditions. It was only as they walked toward the parking lot together, an unplanned but natural continuation of the encounter, that Caleb and Isabella struck up an easy conversation about a cartoon they both apparently watched, breaking whatever remaining tension lingered between the adults. "Can I ask what happened?" Adam said carefully, once the children were sufficiently distracted. "You don't have to answer, but if there's something more serious going on, I'd like to help if I can." Maria hesitated, then found herself explaining more than she'd intended. Her husband's departure 18 months earlier, the diner job that barely covered rent even before her hours were cut, the constant, exhausting calculation of what Isabella needed versus what they could actually afford. "I've been trying to find something more stable," Maria admitted. "But it's hard, finding work with hours that match her school schedule, without family nearby to help." Adam listened without interrupting, something thoughtful settling into his expression. "I might know of something," he said finally. "Whitmore Technologies has an administrative position opening in our community outreach division. The hours are stable, family-friendly, and the pay is significantly better than what you're likely making now. I'd like to have someone from HR reach out to you, if you're interested." Maria studied him carefully, old suspicion warring with cautious hope. "Why would you do that? You don't know anything about my qualifications. I know you're clearly working hard to give your daughter a stable life, under difficult circumstances," Adam said simply. "That tells me more about your character than a resume would." Maria accepted the interview cautiously, still uncertain whether to trust the sudden shift in her fortune, and found herself, 3 weeks later, genuinely qualified for and offered the position, steady hours, health benefits, pay that finally allowed room to breathe rather than simply survive. Adam made a point of never treating the situation as charity. insisting instead that her performance in the role spoke entirely for itself once she'd settled in. Over the following months, Isabella and Caleb's easy friendship deepened into regular playdates, and Maria and Adam found themselves building a cautious, genuine connection of their own, rooted not in the dramatic circumstances of their first meeting, but in the quiet, ordinary moments that followed: shared coffee during school pickup, long conversations about raising children alone. The particular understanding that passed between two parents who'd each rebuilt their lives from difficult circumstances in very different ways. "You didn't have to help me that day," Maria told him one evening, watching their children build an elaborate blanket fort in his living room. "Most people would have just looked away." "Most people didn't see what I saw," Adam said. "Isabella reaching for your sleeve like that, trying to comfort you when she was the one who needed comforting. That's not something I could just walk past." Maria felt her eyes sting slightly, gratitude and something warmer settling together in her chest. "She's always been like that. Trying to take care of everyone around her, even when she shouldn't have to." "She won't have to anymore," Adam said quietly. "Not if I have anything to do with it." What began as a humiliating moment in a grocery store checkout line became, over time, the foundation of a stability neither Maria nor Isabella had dared hope for. Proof that sometimes the smallest, most overlooked gestures, noticed by the right person at the right moment, can quietly change the entire trajectory of a family's life.